Welcome back to Mind Your Biz. My name is Seth, and in today's creator highlight episode, in lieu of working with a creator, talking to a creator, I'm going to talk to a builder in the space. You may remember him from an interview that I did with Jesse some months ago, but it is Jesse from PowerCity.io. It's an ecosystem and a suite of tools for the upcoming Pulse Chain launch. Once it does go mainnet, you're going to hear a lot more about PowerCity.io. But if you're on the current testnet, you're already aware of them. And of course, if you are not getting any exposure to Pulse Chain right now, I think you're missing out, because if you have any ETH in a wallet, you can go and mess around on the test nets right now. Jesse, welcome to Mind Your Biz.
Hey, thanks, Seth. That was a nice shout out there. Yeah, I am a founder of Power City, one of the founders of Power City. And yeah, we do have some cool tools. We like the idea of tools and services on blockchains, as opposed to, maybe coins that do nothing, or meme coins or things like that. So what you'll find from us is some bridge and DEX aggregators that find people the best routes to do trades and swaps across multiple blockchains. We have some auto compounding tools. So if you're using like a liquidity fork and you have various strategies in there for yield or whatever, or taking loans or paying back loans, we have tools that will auto compound and auto do some of those things for you. We also have a stablecoin protocol for PulseX and an NFT platform, right?
Jeez. Okay, so you guys, basically you don't sleep is what you're saying.
Yeah. And the community can participate in all the fee. We've got this term we like to throw around, revenue over inflation, right? So we believe that the most sustainable sort of yield is through fees, right? People are paying to use wallets. People are paying to use swaps on Uniswap. People pay for things. And if that's where people collect their yield from, is through other people paying, it's 100% sustainable through any market condition, right?
Yeah. So no, it makes sense. The incentive is also in favor of the market, right? That's a buyer's market too, in that whoever is making the best products is going to get all of the all the dollars, or all the fees, right? Like if you stop being relevant by innovating, then you're going to miss out on those fees. And versus say inflation to an empty chain or to an empty service. No, I love it, man. That's great. Those are words to live by.
Yep. So lately in crypto, we keep hearing these regulatory fears. They keep coming from all different angles, right? Staking is going to be banned. You hear, oh, stable coins are going to be illegal. All these exchanges are getting themselves wrapped up, right? So, being on the stable coin side of the industry, we need to stay in tune with, are we doing the right thing? Are we not doing the right thing? Is regulation coming to all stable coins or all staking platforms? And I think we've got some perspectives that the community needs to hear. So let's talk about staking, right? So for anything to be a security, right, there's it's actually quite simple. There's a couple things that have to be met for anything to be labeled as a security. You have to have an investment of money. You have to put it into a common enterprise. That could be a pool or an institution or somebody else who collects it for you. And then that pool has to have given you the expectation of profit derived from those people's work, right? So let's look at an example of that. Celsius, right? Their pitch was, give us your coins, we will custody them for you, right? So you're actually disposing of your coins because you no longer own them. They're no longer in your wallet. They own the keys to those coins. Now, they would also promise returns, 7% on your USDC, for example. And then they would go invest those assets. And they already gave you expectation of profit, right? And they would funnel those profits back to you. The problem was they lost everyone's money, right?
Yeah.
But they failed every single leg of the Howey test.
Yeah. Well, by that definition, though, it's funny, kind of laying this out. Almost every custodial service that offers any degree of yield does, including banks that offer you any kind of yield on a savings, albeit, terrible rates. Even banks fail the Howey test when you
Right.
lay it out this way, for sure.
Right. Right. So an investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit based on their work. Now, so you can see how when an exchange like Celsius fails, and then one like FTX fails because the founder just runs off with everyone's money, and this happens over and over and over, how the SEC would want to step in and say, we have to protect people because this keeps happening over and over. And the only angle they have to go off of is, wow, all of these places offering these services are failing this Howey test. Let's get them on securities violations, right? Let's put some enforcement actions in place and try and put a stop to this because it's been happening for way too long, right? It's been happening since almost the beginning of crypto.
Yeah.
So I do think they're trying to protect people from that angle. Now, what's interesting is if you stake in a protocol with your own keys, in a protocol such as Liquidity or Liquid Loans or our Earn protocol or Hex or something like that, there's lots of staking platforms. There is no common enterprise. You're not giving up your keys to somebody else. It's your keys, your coins. You're deriving your own profits from you clicking the button, not somebody else. You haven't actually disposed of your assets to somebody else for them to go invest. You still control those wallets. They're still yours. So staking in DeFi cannot be a security.
Well, what's funny and what I think is getting really confusing for retail right now, Jesse, is that we're hearing from the SEC that the staking of Ethereum is certainly the staking of Ethereum in managed pools is
Right.
considered a security, right? Like this is what we're
Mhm.
hearing. Like Kraken, right? Kraken was told like, hey, you guys got to stop that. All the exchanges were told you can't let people stake on your platform because then they're earning yield on your platform, and so now you failed one too many. You've checked one too many boxes of the Howey test.
Right.
So I think what most people are concerned about is that there'll come a point at which the SEC just decides, right? The whole regulation via enforcement. They're just going to say like, well, actually, staking to the validator network, even on your own by signing in your own wallets, like staking on your own, that's considered a common enterprise because or you're relying on the work of others because you delegated your stake to a validator, a specific validator. So you're expecting them to do work for you, even though it's not the same as say like proof of work. There's a
But you're
massive
doing the
outlay.
work.
Yeah,
The
it should
thing is,
be viewed that way. I
you are
agree.
the one doing the work. Your computer, your node is the one conducting the work to
If you're
receive the money.
a validator, right? But I think where people are concerned with the sort of the saber rattling of the SEC is that that's going to be the direction that they go is just claiming, like framing it that way, that because there's a foreign validator that is not your own hardware doing the work there, that validator is doing the work, and so you are relying on the work of others in setting up that validator infrastructure that you delegate your stake to, that will be viewed as a failure of the Howey test somehow, even though it feels like it's such a stretch at this point. But it seems like with the posture of the SEC that they're capable of saying that.
Right.
So that's I think the concern that I have, right? That it's the SEC has gone rogue, but
Yeah, but I don't think their goal is to stop crypto, right? I literally think their goal is to try and protect users. I think that's why they're going after these exchanges with clear look. These guys were running securities, unregistered securities. Lots of people lost money because of that. Let's reel them back in, right? So I think that's their angle. Now, stablecoins is another angle, and that people are worried about. And it's interesting because for over 100 years, there's always been banking regulations. Institutions that are dealing with fiat national currency dollars, right? They have rules that they have to go by. There's underwriting requirements, there's depository on hand reserve requirements, there's all sorts of things. So if a institution is going to make like Circle, right? If they're going to mint a stable coin based off of fiat reserves, they're essentially a bank. There should be regulation, at least some oversight over what that process is. Are they following the guidelines to protect the fiat dollar? Right.
Well, I mean, you do know that Circle, that they applied for a federal bank charter. This yeah, it's been some time now. They did apply to become a federal bank, or recognized as a federal bank here in the United States. So they're the only stablecoin issuer that has taken that step. So and they did so preemptively before it became some kind of a federal requirement.
And they may become the de facto CBDC someday, right? So let's say that they follow all the rules for being a payment stablecoin, which I'll cover what that means. It's really interesting. And now they're within the guidelines of what the United States says. You have to do these following things to be a payment stablecoin issuer. As long as they're meeting those rules, we could get to a point a couple of years from now where the government says, yep, they're fully licensed to be a CBDC. We approve of what they're doing, for at least for now. And as we go through our audits, if something comes up, the license to be called the CBDC will be revoked, right? You could see something like that. Why reinvent the wheel? And I don't think the U.S. Treasury is going to mint their own crypto. You have other, you already have entities that are doing it, as long as they're following within the framework, the required rules to be safe, so to speak. There's always counterparty risk. But why wouldn't we just use something like USDC as the de facto CBDC? Now, I'm not suggesting that anybody use anything centralized, by the way. There are literally better ways.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying as far as there being the potential, and that's become a narrative, at least within the sort of crypto community, people who are, who live this day in, day out. The narrative is becoming that Circle and USDC are the most likely candidate to become a de facto CBDC. And I think where I take issue with that is that it is obvious that this administration, that the current Biden administration, that they have gone out of their way to fund research into creating a new, a novel code base for a CBDC that the U.S. could use. And so I don't think that the real world threat of there being a brand new blockchain that the federal government controls, I don't think that we're out of the woods yet. I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion that Circle and that USDC will just win and just become the actual CBDC. So what I'm getting at is that if the U.S. government does create its own blockchain, and I know we have other examples of the Chinese government attempting to and then failing royally, having massive problems. We have examples of other sovereign nations attempting to launch their own blockchains and having it just be a flop. But we have examples of others launching their own time chains, like how Estonia did back in 2007, technically predating Bitcoin, and having it still in operation. Right? It's not strictly speaking a blockchain, but it is an append-only database. And you do have some federal governments that that aren't as bad at handling their own keys as, say, the Chinese Communist Party is. And so it makes me think, we have examples on both sides of various governments that are interested in digital identity, that are interested in in working in the being very tech forward. And the U.S. I don't think that we're out of the woods yet. I think it's still too early to pick winners. I think that USDC and Circle, yes, they might be favored for a long time, but maybe not forever. That's what I'm getting at.
We'll have to see how that plays out, because historically the government spends a lot of time researching, and they still end up 5 to 10 years behind anybody else in technology.
Sure.
So, and there are a bunch of they're underpaid. Look, I'm retired from the military, and then I'm very familiar with the government contracting work and stuff. And government employees get paid not very well, right? So it's very likely all this research they're doing is from the commercial side already. People who are
they're grants. It's not being done internally at all. There's no way. Yeah, there's no way anything would get done. Like you're saying, there's no way anything would get done if it were done internally, and not for lack of like brain power or manpower, just like funding, straight up.
But
It
I
would need
think
to
they're
be
always
somewhere.
going to be a step behind in their tech. Now, I do want to like say, okay, so with all this regulation stuff that's coming out, payment stablecoin, what does that mean? That doesn't mean all stablecoins. Payment stablecoin is a digital asset redeemable on demand 1-to-1 for an instrument denominated in the United States dollar defined as legal tender under Section 5103 under the laws of a foreign country. And then it says excluding digital assets. So the thing they're regulating is what they're defining as a payment stablecoin. And a payment stablecoin is something that's backed by an actual dollar. They're not regulating something that's backed by another crypto, right? They're looking at regulating things that are actually backed, like Circle, like USDC, supposed to be backed by a dollar. That's what they're looking at. Issued by a business entity. All right. So not things like DAI, not things like Liquidity with the LUSD. There's no business entity there. You mint your own coins over there, right? Circle, they issue USDC based off of fiat dollars. If these entities are issuing stablecoins accompanied by a statement from the issuer that the asset is redeemable as specified in subparagraph A and backed by one or more financial assets, excluding other digital assets. So there's a lot of these, like if you look at any of the regulatory stuff or the presidential working group that was reviewing stablecoins, they all use the same language. They're looking at things that are backed by the dollar, that are issued by a central entity, and that have made statements that this thing is redeemable, this stablecoin, such as USDC, is redeemable back for a dollar. If they're doing those things, they are a payment stablecoin. They're essentially serving as like a banking type entity, and they need to be regulated. But all of this language excludes stable coins that are backed by other digital assets. That's not what they're targeting at all.
Right. Yeah. So this is, Jesse, I mean, so when you reached out to me and asked like, hey, can we just have like a rap session talking about this stuff? It was an instant yes for me, because the Metaverse community, we tend to, a lot of the community tends to feel very similarly that that algorithmic, right, over collateralized stable coins are, they really are the in crypto sort of like the money that's for the people by the people.
Yeah. And you know what? You know what's funny? I think the SEC feels that too. Like they actually say it. The SEC has this framework on digital assets. It's called the Framework on Digital Assets. You can find it right on their website. And there's a section that talks about stablecoins. Algorithmic, if we like to use that word, algorithmic stablecoin.
Yeah, it gets a bad rap because it's because they're it probably I think maybe for the audience's benefit, what you've been discussing with like Liquidity and as a protocol and some of the other protocols that I know you and I both favor, maybe just over collateralized is the right
over collateralized
thing to latch onto.
Because the only thing algorithmic or autonomous is like the fee, right? Are you going to pay a 0.5% fee or a 5% fee or somewhere in between? That's the only thing. The actual peg, the value, none of that's algorithmic at all.
No, yeah,
it maintains a peg through one very, very simple mechanism. It's always redeemable for its underlying collateral, $1's worth of it, right? So it doesn't matter where you bought it or found it. You can always bring it back and get $1's worth of that collateral back from the vaults, right? There's nothing algorithmic there. Right. So I do not like that word.
Yeah. It gets. Well, yeah. It's. I mean, historically, the algorithmic stablecoins that are fully synthetic, they do cause some problems. But when you talk about it, an over collateralized debt or a collateralized debt position, right? A CDP. But yeah, using a collateral debt position to then create something else, like Yeah, I think it's tough. We've heard so many narratives about algorithmic stables being bad and about certain synthetic derivatives being bad, in particular synthetic derivatives, not just synthetics, but creating something from something else, ergo synthesizing it. So you test positives, test some false positives when you say algorithmic or synthetic, right? It sounds like, well, instantly bad, right? It's algorithmic and synthetic. That's bad.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, well, no, there's more nuance than that, but yeah, just to your point, the thing that matters is you're not making these stable coins out of nothing. You're not synthesizing them out of nothing, and you're not creating some mirrored
It's
derivative.
really not that much different than a bridge, a traditional bridge, where you lock up an asset and it mints you something else on the other side, right? It's really not that different.
Right.
This thing locks up one thing and it mints you something else, and it's all within your smart contract and your wallet and stuff. So it's kind of like a bridge built into your wallet. That's all it is, right? So one other thing here that I found, which is really interesting, which makes me believe that the SEC is not targeting these algorithmic stablecoins because they're not securities. And they say that they're not securities right here in their framework. And they say, although not one of the following characteristics or use of consumption is necessarily deterministic. The stronger the following things, the less likely the Howey test is met. Right. So if it has the following things, it's highly likely it's not a security. One, the distributed ledger, the blockchain, and network, and the digital asset are fully developed and operational. Yes, they don't want people making a coin that you can't use, that's unable, that on a broken blockchain or on a broken network where people are buying something and then they're unable to actually do something with it. They want to protect people from that, right? So is it on a distributed ledger network and everything's able to be fully operational? Check. Yes. Holders of the asset are immediately able to use it for its intended functionality on the network, especially if there are built-in incentives to encourage its use. Yes. So when you launch a protocol, do you have a coin that you say has incentives but doesn't? Or if it does have incentive mechanisms, staking, i.e. staking, can people do that immediately and put it to work as it's designed? That's what they want to see. Yes. Number 3, here's where you can tell they're specifically talking about algorithmic stablecoins. The digital assets creation or structure is designed and implemented to meet the needs of the user rather than to feed speculation as to its value or the development on its network. For example, the digital asset can be used on the network and can be held or transferred only in amounts corresponding to its expected use. That sounds like a dollar.
It really
Right?
does.
Something
Yeah.
like DAI or LUSD or something. Nobody buys it because they think it's going to go up in value. They're not doing it as a spec. It is not an investment, right? So they expand and they say prospects for appreciation in the value of the digital asset are limited. For example, its design provides that its value will remain constant, and therefore a reasonable purchaser would not expect to hold the digital asset for an extended period of time as an investment. So when you kind of tie that back in, and that comes from the SEC, from their framework on digital assets, and could something be a security or not? And you tie that back into the Howey test. The Howey test says to fail and be a security, you have to have an investment of money. The SEC goes on to say in this framework that a stablecoin is not an investment of money because you're not expecting it to go up in value, right? You're also like in these decentralized stablecoin protocols, there's no common enterprise, there's no expectation of profits derived from the work of others. None of that exists. So there's literally nothing that they can stop, nor do I believe that they actually want to stop them. When you read the framework, you can see they're okay with this sort of thing.
Well, my one concern about the way that the SEC has been operating lately, Jess, is that like on the other side of protocols like Liquidity for LUSD, where there's an incentive for being a liquidity provider, right, and benefiting potentially from the liquidations that take place, is that with the way the SEC has been going, like on a bad day, right, on a day when the SEC, when Gary Gensler eats a rotten banana, he can look at that side of the protocol and say like, well, you guys are expecting profit from liquidations. So there you go. There's a checkbox for the Howey test, which is messed up. But I don't know. I guess I just like I don't I don't trust the guy. I don't trust the SEC inherently right now. I think that there've been a couple of cases where they're grasping a little bit too much to try to make a case where they do still need to let more innovation happen, because not every case that the SEC has out right now is as cut and dried as as FTX and Celsius, right? So yeah, I do worry a little bit about them potentially like turning their like 50 megawatt laser over onto that side of these over collateralized stablecoins and the protocols like Liquidity, and then just cherry picking to make some kind of a case, right? Like, oh well, somebody's profiting from these liquidations. Who is it? But it's like without those incentives, there's no initial supply, right? Like you need to have an initial supply of these stables for people to then peg other cryptos into their, our native dry powder.
Right.
So yeah, like it's a weird space, man. Like I don't know that there's any way around offering somebody some incentive to participate. I think the language that you quoted though from that site does bring up that incentives can exist though, right?
Yeah,
Like
incentives can exist. They have to be fully operational.
Yeah. Okay. So it needs to be
So
baked
it's
into a
like
smart
really
contract that can just run.
right, but that's very different than like we talked about earlier, like on a central exchange where you're giving up basically you're just giving away your money to somebody else for them to go invest and make money and incentives somewhere else and then bring money
Yeah.
back and give it back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's a
if they
secure
happen to be making that money by getting other people's fees, then it happens to be a Ponzi. Yeah. Right.
right. So like there is a big difference. Staking in DeFi, I think is not an issue at all. Staking on central exchanges, they take exception to that, right? They have a problem with that. But I think we're going to be okay. I think this is all very bullish for the next, this next bull run, and DeFi is going to be, amazing, probably, right? I think
Yeah.
exchanges are, being tightened. It's like follow our rules, and then people just like to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Crypto users just want to do their own thing and make profits, and that's okay. But don't give your money to somebody else because chances are they're just going to lose it all, right? Or steal
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah. 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 Wait, I don't know how many times people need to be warned, how many times we need to see it for them to finally learn that lesson. But I think you're right. Hey, Jess, I've got a quick question, and this is just a disclosure type thing. Did I ask you for any kind of a fee to jump onto my show today?
Zero. No fee. And
Okay.
nor would I pay it, nor would I come on the show if there was a fee.
Right. Fair enough. But sometimes making content in this space, talk about incentives and having them aligned correctly. Making content in this space can be a minefield because there are always people who ask for favors, and it's like, okay, well, you got one life to live, 24 hours in a day. And other things that I know you could be doing with your time. So I appreciate you coming on and appreciate you clearing that up for the audience that I didn't ask for a fee. You didn't pay one.
I didn't offer one. There's no coins. There's no cash. There's nothing.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Yeah. Appreciate clearing that up. I know, especially when it comes to the Hex and Pulse community, there's extreme criticism of ever engaging in influencer marketing, which is still just marketing. But that's not what we're doing here today. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your thoughts. Super educational and enlightening. So would love to wrap with you on these topics again in the future. And in the meantime, I'm curious, where can the Mining Biz audience find out more about what you're working on, or just have a conversation with you casually?
Yeah. Well, my username is the same on Twitter, just as Jesse. Or if you want to see what our products are all about, you can on Twitter at PowerCityIO. Same on Telegram, PowerCityIO. And that's where people come and they ask all sorts of questions. There's, hit us up on any one of those. Power City IO, Twitter or Telegram.
That's awesome. Okay, let me throw that on screen just so the audience can see it just very, very simply. And oh, nope, that one. And appreciate you again, Jess. Metaverse community. Go follow on all the links you see down in the description, or just check right there. And yeah, I can't wait to have you back on. We'll talk about more of this stuff. It's fascinating, and it's not outside of any of our ability to just read and figure out. So thanks for bringing that to us and helping us to understand a little better.
Yep. Thanks, Seth. See y'all.